Hello, welcome back to the Accountant Training Program. Today I'm going to be going over a few basic account settings and then also diving into the features that you can put in place for employees and for your client's account that may be useful for them. So to get started, we will want to just verify that our time zone is correct. So I'm going to go to Settings and then Timeclock Settings. And that's going to bring me right into my basic settings. So underneath basic settings, you'll notice time zone. We'll just want to verify that this is correct. You can make your selection. If you do not recognize daylight savings, you could turn this off. You will want to make sure that your pay period type matches what you're going to have for payroll. So we have weekly all the way to monthly, and you would just set that up in here. Over to the right, you're going to notice we have options. So we have a punch rounding option. 0 is going to be real time. You could choose to apply a 6 or a 15-minute punch round. Time card audit trail, by default, this will be on. This is just going to show you any changes that get made into your time cards by an admin, a manager, or an employee if you had that capability. We do have an approval system that could be turned on. You can either have it at the admin manager level, where an admin and manager comes into the time cards and then approves them. You could also have it 2-tier, where an employee approves their time card and then an admin and a manager comes in and approves the time card. With employee time card approval, you could have a message that they're agreeing to and then require that they type an approval response. And that gets set up under, again, settings, time clock settings, and then basic settings. I'm going to pop over to our employee punch site tab. Under here we have a couple options. So group punch settings, if you wanted a tablet set up in a general spot or just one computer that your employees were going to come to punch in and out, we have group punch settings. You would just turn this on and register a device, and then your employees can now come to that device and just punch in their number. It's eliminating the need for that username and password. Underneath employee punch site, you could customize your logo. This is going to show up on your desktop punch-in screen. Schedule, so if you are interested in using the scheduling feature, you would want to turn your schedule on under your settings under the employee punch site. You can turn it to personal or all employees. Personal just means that an employee can only see their schedule. All employees means they can see everyone's. Global message down here. You can put a start date and a through date and then enter in a little message. When your employee comes to punch in, it's just going to say a message from your admin, and the message is going to display at punch in. And this will only cross over into the desktop as of right now. So now I'm going to jump over to employees, and I'm just going to view my full employee list. I'm going to go ahead and just select an employee so that we can go through some of the features that we can apply. Okay, so in my employees settings, I'm under general. We can tell because this is highlighted. I'm going to pop over to additional options. In here, we're just going to want to make sure that our time zone again matches that of the main account. You'll notice that there's also an auto adjust for daylight savings here that you can adjust. And then we're going to scroll down to the bold heading overtime and breaks. In here is where we're actually going to be able to apply our overtime and break rule. So if I click this, this is how I can just adjust what my overtime rule is. And then now that this is applied, anything over 40 hours per week, the system's going to know and it's automatically going to move that to overtime for me. We also have auto deduct break and break duration. So auto deduct break is saying that after X amount of hours, I'm going to take X amount of time from an employee. So the way I have it right here, after 4 hours of work, I'm going to take 30 minutes from the time cards. This would be unpaid. This eliminates the need for punching in and out for the day for a break. This is optional. You can turn this off if you don't need this particular feature. And now I'm just going to go back up to the top where we have a couple different features that can be put in place on your employee. So up at the top to the right, I have PTO settings. In here, I can list my employees' paid time off. We have vacation, sick, personal, and holiday. So if I click the drop down next to the name, it gives me a couple options. So off just means that we don't have this turned on. Allot X hours per year, and then we have 4 separate accrual options. So allotment just means that I'm giving the employee that time right up front from the beginning of the year. They can use it at any time. I have accrue X hours per regular hour worked, accrue X% of regular worked hours, accrue X hours per pay period, and accrue X hours per every hour worked. Accrue X hours per every hour worked is going to include an overtime hour, whereas per regular hour worked does not include overtime. None of our PTO categories are going to accrue on PTO days. So once you pick your rule, you would just go ahead and put in either the allotment amount or your accrual value. And you can start accruing on and stop accruing on, so you would just put your dates here. This could be the calendar year or perhaps anniversary date to anniversary date. We have previous balance. If I allowed carry forward and say I'm starting over and they carried over 8 hours, I would just put a positive value here and we would apply that on top. The way that this works is they would get 8 additional hours and still accrue their full amount. Now if they were negative, you could actually put a negative value here and then we would just less that than their amount. So it would be 40 allotted hours less 8 to start. Max hours per year, since I'm allotment, I'm not really going to have a max hours because they're only getting what I'm giving them up front. But with an accrual, you could go ahead and put what they would accrue up to here, and then we'll stop the accrual once they hit that. Now keep in mind, if you have a max hours per year of 120 and they had a previous balance of 8 and you were on an accrual, they would technically get 128 hours. So next on our employee tab, we have location and security. So we have mobile rules and GPS. Right now I have everything turned off, so if I was to enable mobile punch, this is just going to allow the use of a cell phone or a tablet. I can apply a mobile rule. We have a couple different options. Do not record GPS coordinates. This would just mean that I'm allowing you to use your tablet and your mobile device and I'm not really concerned about your location. Record GPS coordinates. By default, this is the option that's on. This just says that if the employee were to share their location, we would obtain it, but they do have a choice to not do so. The most common rule is record GPS and require GPS to punch. This means that you have to have location services turned on and you must share your location with us in order to clock in and out so we can obtain that location. We also have a warn and a disable if not at GPS punch locations. So with this, you can actually set up a geofence around a location. And when you put these rules on, that just means that the employee needs to be at that location to punch in. So warn means they can be at the location or they can not be at the location and they're going to receive a warning. Disable means they must be at that location in order to clock in and out. Applying this rule to an employee with your location set up on the account, all the locations that you put on the account apply. Then we have app GPS tracking. So the way that this works is if your employee's punched in and they're moving around, every 200 meters that they do move, we are going to obtain a location and drop a breadcrumb trail that you'll be able to view on your punch map. The employee does have the capability to turn app GPS tracking off, so this is something that they can control. They cannot control the mobile rules up here, so if you require GPS, they have to have location services turned on, but just keep in mind they can turn off app GPS tracking. IP authorization, just another security setting that we do have. This is based on your public IP address. And you'll notice that our enforcement level is lockout, which means they wouldn't be able to punch in and out if they weren't at this public IP. You could also choose warn, works the same way as locations, it would just warn you. Enforcement type most commonly is going to just be IP. And right where we have our IP, we're going to go ahead and just enter in our public IP address here, and that's going to lock the employee down to it. Another common enforcement type might be a multi-IP range. And the way that a multi-IP range would work is you would just take your public IP address and repeat it in each of these so that it's going from and to the same IP, and you could just add it, and then you would do the same thing for your second IP address. This might come in handy if your client has 3 locations and the employees kind of travel between those, but they only want them to be able to punch in and out at any of those 3 locations. So you could lock them down to all 3 IP addresses of those locations so they could punch in at all of them. Next, over on the right, we have device and browser authorization. Before you enable this, you will want employees to log in at least once on where they're going to be logging into. So when you click this, devices are listed. And what you can do is over on the right, you can allow punching on the devices that you would like them to be able to use. This prevents that buddy punching. If somebody called somebody up and said, hey, can you punch me in? And they were only locked down to their iOS device, no one else would be able to do it. It's going to tell them that they're at an unauthorized device. One thing to keep in mind with this is if you were to delete your app and then bring it back, you would need to come back in and reauthorize the app. Same with a browser. So if you are in a browser and you clear your cache and cookies, you are going to need to come back in here and reauthorize that device because we're storing a cookie. Fingerprint sign-on, we do have a fingerprint sign-on option. This prevents buddy punching. This is a separate device, so this would be a URU 4500 digital persona. We have software built in for it. You would purchase that from a third party, and then this is only working on a Windows-based computer, so you would need a Windows-based computer or tablet. It's a USB device that you would plug in, and then employees could put their finger on it and punch in that way. Desktop GPS rules, so if you did have a desktop that had GPS capabilities or you had a laptop, you could turn this on and then we would just obtain location. Next we have alerts and messaging. So in here we do have the option to turn on SMS text message alerts. What this is doing here is just saying that you would like to receive a text each time an employee punched in or out, and you would just specify which of those you wanted. And then you could go ahead and specify a number and we would just text to that number. Now this is a premium feature. It would be $2 additional flat fee a month and then a penny per cent text message. Punch messages, this is included. So employee notes, by default this will be off, but you can allow an email manager. This just allows when an employee punches in and out for the day to leave a note with their punch in and out, and it'll show up on the time cards, or if you have email manager selected, your manager is going to receive an email about the note. Message to employee. You can enter in a little message here with a start date and a through date. This is just going to show up when they go to punch in, kind of like that global message. This does only translate in the desktop version. And then we also have the option to add pay rates onto your employee. We can only track one single pay rate. So when you enter in your pay rates, we would just take that rate times the amount of hours that they worked, and we would just give you a gross total. More for budgeting, we're not doing anything fancy with this. And then once you've completed all the settings that you wanted in the employee profile, you would just go ahead and hit Save Settings down here, and then everything that you've done will apply. So let's just jump back to PTO. So if you do have your PTO rules set up on your employee, under Current PTO and Requests, this is where you're going to be able to view their summary. And you'll notice there's an Adjust PTO Settings here. If I was to click this, it would just bring me into Test Employees so that I could take a look at their rules. Excel Export, it's going to Excel export all this information that we see listed here. Your employee is going to see the same type of summary. You can also go to Vacation and just see what's been used. And then down below is where you would see any pending requests. You could also filter through and see your approved and denied. As an admin or a manager, you could also add a PTO request for somebody. This looks similar to how an employee would put in their own request, but you would basically just come in here, select your employee, you can select a date. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a date, so it goes ahead and populates that for me. You can see how many hours a day. You could mark it as unpaid if it was unpaid time. It'll tell you that it was created by whoever created the request. You could leave a note, and then in your side, if you create request and time cards, you're already approving it, so it's just going to automatically be applied to the calendar and the time cards. Now also under this PTO icon, we have Add Bulk PTO. So if you have holidays that you're recognizing, in step 1, you can select the employees that you wish to apply it to. Step 2, you just select your calendar year. And then underneath step 3, you can go ahead and specify the holidays where these hours need to be applied. We do give you a few standard holidays over here. And then in HOL, we can go ahead and put how many hours they are receiving. You can customize a couple dates here too. And then when you hit Save PTO, we're just going to populate those automatically for you. So under PTO, we also have PTO Renewal. So when your employees are due for renewal, you'll notice that right now I don't have anyone here, nobody's due. You can do within 30 days. All employees is just going to show you everybody. We can see that nobody's up for renewal. Now if you wanted to renew somebody's PTO, you would just turn this slider green here for Renew PTO. Apply your policy, so if you allow carry forward, you can say yes, it's going to carry over all the hours. If you say no, we'll carry over none, or you can say some and then just specify a value. And then you would go ahead and roll forward vacation PTO. Then up at the top, you'll notice there's Export PTO Balances. So before you were going to renew anything, you could actually just click Export PTO Balances. And this is just going to bring up a list of all your employees and all their current PTO as it stands, so that you have that for your records. Then we have our PTO calendar. This is just going to display all the time that is currently requested and approved. So I went back a month, we can see that this employee has Friday the 3rd off in July as a holiday. So if I click it, it's going to give me information. So approved holiday. You'll notice there's a couple stars here. This PTO is not associated with this record, manually added through the time card editor. So there was no request for it, it was just a holiday that was added in. We do have a key down here, so green just means approved. If it was pending, it would be yellow. Red would be a denied request, and then that little red circle just means we're notifying you about something specific about that entry. So then over here we do have our filters. You can scroll through the month. You could filter by a specific employee you wanted to see. You could do a department. You can pick your specific type you wanted to see. You could pick a status and then reset the filters. And up here at the top, you could rearrange this into a week view or a day view or even just a list so that it just shows you a list of all the things going on in that month. Now I'm going to bring us over to the schedule. So we do have two types of schedule for the employees. We have a dynamic schedule where we can create shifts. So you can see I have 2 shifts created with times, and then I can just view my schedule. By default, this is going to be in a week view, and I can add time to these schedules. I can change the appearance, I can color code, I could add a location, this would show up for them to read. I can pick from my defined shifts, or in advanced time options, I could actually just pick and create my own shift that's outside of the definition, and I can even leave a note. And I can save. Now you can copy these shifts over. You'll notice in your little box here, there's a copy this shift. And I could do the same thing for employee 2, and I could select a date, and then I could hit copy now, and it would just copy over. And then you'll notice it just goes ahead and it applies that shift. So we'll go back so that you can see that. So it copied this shift over. Now you will notice this schedule has been published, which means that my employee can view this schedule right now. And to publish a schedule, you're just going to go to schedule options right here, those little gears. And you can unpublish a schedule so that it's no longer viewable. So I'm just going to go back to this gear here. Publish now. Okay. Lets me know that I've published this. My employee now receives an email link. They can click that link, they can see the schedule, and then they can also log in on the desktop or their app, click schedule and view this. Underneath our schedule options, we can customize the dates that we would like to see. We can copy a week full schedule over to the next week with copy now. We can filter by location, department, and manager. You can delete your entire schedule by clicking delete visible shifts if you needed to, if you just needed a clean slate. You can do an Excel download of this and then print that out, or you could do a PDF version of this schedule and print it out. You can change your view to a day. By default, it's going to be on week, and then you can also do month and then just kind of scroll through your month. And that's our dynamic schedule. This is just here to let employees know when they're supposed to be at work. So it's just going to notify them that these are their hours, this is when they should be at work, this is when they should be working. The other type of schedule that we have under here is a fixed schedule. Our fixed schedule happens behind the scene. You're never going to publish this out. They can't view this schedule. So the way that it works is you would add a schedule, and then you could just name it. You can apply breaks in here. So maybe you have breaks, maybe you don't. I'm going to apply 3. And I'm going to go ahead and just enter in a basic schedule. So I'm going to say this employee should start at 8 a.m. Punch in and out. You'll notice with these breaks I have manual as an option, so I might be saying that they need to manually do this, or I might apply auto so that the system just automatically clocks somebody out and back in at this time. I'm going to do auto, and I'm going to say that this is a paid break, so you can also see that you can define if a break is unpaid, paid, or just a portion of that break is paid. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 10-minute break in here, and I'm going to say from 9 a.m. to 9:10 a.m. they should be auto clocked out and it's paid. My second break I'm going to leave as manual, and I'm going to say some of this is paid, and I'm just going to say like a half hour of this is paid. And this is going to be a lunch, so they get an hour lunch, up to an hour for their lunch. Only a half hour of it is going to be paid. So the system's going to know that they need to manually punch out for this. So the employee has to punch out for this break. It's going to know that some of it needs to be paid. So from 12 to 12:30, it's going to pay. And then anything after that is going to be unpaid. Break 3, I'm going to make this auto again so that the system automatically clocks my employee out and then back in. And I'm just going to say that this is another 10-minute break. And then I have day end can be manual again, so you can choose that your employee must manually clock out, or you could have them auto clocked out. We will never auto clock somebody in due for attendance reasons. In order for automation to ever start, somebody does have to manually punch in. It is triggered by a manual punch in. So under day end, we have out time, so you can either specify a time that they needed to be punched out, like 5 p.m., or you could specify a number of hours where you wanted them punched out. You don't need to put both of these on, you would pick one or the other, so I'm just going to say at 8 hours, we should be punched out. And then you can copy this down under Monday and apply the schedule throughout the week. Under step 3, you would just select the employees to apply it to. An employee can only be applied to one schedule, so you'll notice there's this little exclamation. Is just letting me know that these employees are already assigned to another schedule. You'll notice that there's apply, so you would apply them to the schedule, and then punch reminder. If I was to apply a punch reminder, that means that 10 minutes prior to any of these punch out times, they're going to be reminded to punch in or punch out. So out 8 hours, 10 minutes before 8 hours hits, they're going to be reminded to punch out if you had that on manual. Or with auto, it's just going to automatically email them and let them know that they've been auto punched out. And then you would just save the schedule, and then that creates. Again, this happens behind the scenes, so you're never going to publish this schedule out, and that's the difference between the dynamic and the fixed. With the dynamic schedule, right here we can see that we've published it. In order for your employees to see your published schedule, I'm just going to remind you again, under Settings, Timeclock Settings, Employee Punch Site, you want to make sure that underneath the bold heading Employee Punch Site, you did opt to turn the schedule on to personal or all employees so that they can view that. And those are the basic features that we have in OnTheClock that you could have for your client that they may be interested in, and all the things that you could put in on your employee's profile. And I hope you have a great afternoon.